Welcome to this module of a Flowise applied project. Throughout this module, we will develop various practical exercises in which we will apply everything we have learned so far about Flowise and large language models. These will be diverse exercises that we must complete throughout the course until we finish the entire project. For this applied project, our goal is to develop a personalized conversational assistant capable of answering user questions about this online flower shop. This assistant will provide support to users when they have doubts related to the business. Moreover, through a specific icon, users can access technical support at any time. Once inside, they can ask the assistant questions to obtain answers related to buying flowers. In the following exercises, we will work on different parts of this assistant until we end up with a personalized conversational assistant fully functional and ready for its implementation in the company. For the first practical exercise, our task is to design a scheme highlighting the different components of Flowise required to create a personalized chatbot. This must contain information about the flower selling company and should also be able to answer user questions, whether about the buying process or company details. To solve this exercise, it is crucial to identify and list all the necessary Flowise components and the associated requirements. When you are ready, you can start with this first practical exercise. In the next task, we will explain the proposed solution, allowing you to compare your answer with ours. In this task, we'll explore the solution to design development exercise. The exercise asks us to create a design where we list all the necessary components we should add to Flowise. The aim is to develop a personalized chatbot capable of answering all the questions posed to us. Additionally, we were tasked with creating a chatbot that can address questions related to the company. This necessitates having a large language model that can access the indices containing company information. Below, I present a potential design solution. First, we will need a large language model, either an OpenAI model, such as GPT 3.5 Turbo in this instance, or an open source one. Next, we need a retrieval quad chain that will allow us to engage in a conversation with the model. This will also enable the model to answer questions using vector information. For this reason, the element we use as a chain must have access to vector store retriever. Following that, we will allow it to load the already processed information stored in a vector database. It can be any database, but in this case, we've chosen Pinecone. Within Pinecone, we would need to specify where the stored vectors are located, the index, and the relevant credentials. Lastly, we also require an embeddings component that acts as a translator between the vectors and the model. This way, the model can utilize text snippets to answer user queries. This is just a design proposal. Additional components could have been added, like a model capable of accessing the internet to fetch information requested by the user. With the design now in place, in the upcoming tasks, we will begin developing the solution. Welcome to this second practical exercise where we will develop a basic chat flow using Flowise. For this exercise, you should create a chat flow in which we use a large language model to answer generic questions. While you can use that chat model from the website, we recommend that you choose the ChatGPT or DaVinci model from OpenAI. Since it will be used to respond to general inquiries, there is no need for this model to be trained with specific information about the website. When you are ready, you can begin with this exercise. In the next task, we will provide you with the solution. In this task, we will provide the solution to the development exercise of a basic chat flow. If we recall, this exercise asks us to develop a basic chat flow using a large language model to answer generic user questions. This large language model shouldn't actually be a basic chat flow, as its purpose was to address generic questions. Let's begin with the solution to this exercise. This exercise can be tackled in two ways. The first is to create a conversational assistant with memory to recall the entire user conversation. The second option would be to add a prompt template with directives for it to act as an assistant and answer the user's questions. Both solutions would be correct. To start developing the solution, the first thing we need is to have Flowise installed and then access the application. As we recall, to install Flowise, we must follow the instructions on GitHub. The simplest way was to have Node.js installed. Using this command, install Flowise, launch Flowise once it's installed and access localhost. To do this, we need to access the application. Once installed, we would click on Add New and start developing the ChatFlow. In our case, we'll develop the first option where we give it conversational memory so that the assistant remembers our entire interaction. First, we'd need a model. In this case, we'd go to LLMs and select the one from OpenAI. We'll add the credentials. As we mentioned before, if we don't have the credentials added, we must go to Create New and obtain, in this case from OpenAI, the API key to pass on the credentials and thus consume the model. Next, we can choose whichever model we want, whether DaVinci or one of the other alternatives offered. Lastly, we have hyperparameter settings for these models, like temperature or additional parameters. Once we have the model set, we'll add the LLM chain, which allows us to link a large language model with other elements, such as memory. Here we see the language, which we must link to the model we just added, and also the prompt. To add the prompt, it would be as simple as going to prompt template or chat prompt template. This would also be suitable. This is where we'd pass on the instructions for answering user questions. Finally, we just need to link them. As we know, to test it, the first thing to do is to save the ChatFlow. It will ask for our name, and then we can test it. The other alternative we mentioned was to add memory. For that, we need to remove the prompt template, get rid of it, and also remove the LLM chain. Then we would go to the chain section and add the conversation chain. We'll link the model. In this case, for the model, we would need the chat models because if we take the LLM, it won't work. We need this model version, the grabber. We re-enter the credentials and now we can link it. Finally, we need memory, so that as the assistant talks to us, it stores the conversation. We choose, for instance, the buffer memory, add it, and all that's left is to link the memory. This would be an optional parameter, in case we want to add some contextual information document. In our case, it is not necessary, so we'll save it. We test it, and as we can see, it correctly answers generic user questions. Of the two solution alternatives, this would be the most accurate since it's capable of answering the user's questions and storing the interaction with them. Thus, the way it will answer the questions and the assistant it will provide is much more comprehensive than the previous model, which was much simpler. Congratulations, you have completed this practical exercise. Thank you. Welcome to this third practical exercise where we will develop an assistant using a large language model. For this exercise, you will need to develop an assistant that informs you of the day an order will arrive based on the day the order was placed. The user will need to specify the day, and the assistant must be capable of accessing the internet. It should identify whether the day is a holiday, weekend or weekday. If it's a holiday or weekend, it will add 3 days, and if it's a weekday, it will add 1 day. With a specific set of data, the assistant will be able to identify the day the order will arrive. Through a practical instruction, the assistant will take the day entered by the user and return the day the order is placed. Therefore, you will need to utilize the assistant's ability to access the internet. You will also need to provide a clear instruction for the assistant to return the day the order will arrive. Whenever you are ready, you can begin this practical exercise. In the next task, we will provide the solution. In this task, we will provide the solution to the assistant development exercise. In this exercise, we were asked to develop an assistant that would indicate the day a product would arrive. To do this, the assistant needs to identify whether the day entered by the user is a holiday or not. Based on that information, it will add a specific number of days. Therefore, here we will need to add a prompt that has two variables. One is the day the order was placed, and the other is the user's location to determine if that day is a holiday in that location. Let's begin with the solution. We will add a new project. In turn, we will add a model and a prompt. We'll choose the OpenAI model. As for the prompt, we can opt for the prompt template or the chat prompt template. Next, we'll need to link both elements. which is done through the chains of the LLM chain. With these steps, we would have the foundation. Now it is necessary to add credentials to the model, link it, and finally add the prompt. The instruction we will add is as follows. The assistant must identify the ordered day, determine if it's a holiday, weekday, or weekend, and based on that, add some days. Furthermore, it must consider the location provided by the user. It's given instruction on how many days to add. If it is a holiday or weekend, 3 days. If it's a weekday, 1 day. This is where we should add the different variables. As is known, variables always require certain symbols, and they are added in the prompt value format. Both pieces of information, the day and the location, will be entered in the conversation itself. We select Question and save the ChatFlow. Once the prompt is saved and linked, we can test it. We have added the information for the variables it needs, the order date and the location. If it's determined to be a weekend, 3 days should be added to obtain the delivery date, which would be today.